Todd Williams, representative from the DA's office. Courtney Booth for PD.
Yes, filling in for Sam. Sam's in Ireland.
Excellent. Representative of APD, we can just go ahead and change the name officially, but we have two. What's your formal title? I know your last name, but Deputy Chief now. Congratulations. And also Jonathan
Brown.
Excellent. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Julia Horowitz.
Here.
Daniel Conway.
Here.
Deborah Campbell, our representative from the city. All right, Maggie let us know that she would not be present on behalf of City Council. Anyone filling in for her? All right. Michael Greer also let us know he was not going to be present. Anyone from the Defense Bar?
Here.
Excellent, Justin.
You got probation back here filling in for Mr. Gear.
Page Fatigue Chief.
Let's see, Paige. Honorable Clerk of Court.
Here. Go ahead, keep going.
Representative from the Judge's Office, Judge Scott. Chief Judge Scott. And from HHS, David Sweat.
Here.
All right, and we have a few vacant seats. We're going to address those at a future time, but also some representatives from the Sheriff's Office here. You want to introduce yourselves?
Jeffrey Littrell, captain of the jail.
Alex Solomon, too.
Thank you for joining us, and both of them are going to be presenting some important information about our main topic. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Any corrections? If not, I'll accept the motion approving. Thank you. A second? I'll second it. All in favor? Any opposed? Fantastic. All right, any comments on the agenda at this point? Moving forward, we're going to do a little bit of a slight change to part of our presentations, but to start off with the jail data analysis by Matt Baker on behalf of our strategy and innovation department. Thank you for joining us, Matt. My pleasure.
All right. Hi, I'm Matthew Baker. I'm with Strategy and Innovation with Buncombe County. I'm subbing in for Lee Creighton. As you can tell, I am not Lee. A little bit about me. I've been with the county for 10 years in various roles, most of them around data science and analysis. So I do speak data, but nowhere in that spiel did you hear criminologist. I'm not going to pretend I am that. But don't let that dissuade you from asking questions. We can get you answers to these questions quicker than you waiting to the next meeting on October 3rd to do that. So please ask away and we'll try to get those to you as soon as we can. So we are going to be talking about not potential bylaw amendments.
They're working on
Pulling
it. I
it
see
up.
you.
We're going to be talking about jail population. And I like to start with the end in mind. So I'm going to give you what we call in academia a problem statement. And while we're going to go through copious amounts of data, I want to talk about the drivers of the jail population and things that are happening right now, and maybe some things, a discussion about things we could do. The problem statement I'll give you is that currently the Buncombe County Detention Facility is functioning above its operational capacity. So essentially, how can we free up approximately
What's its
70,
operational capacity?
420 beds, 80% out of 524.
420.
420 is where we want to be, ideally. 419, 420. Thank you, Captain.
And how do we arrive at that number?
How do we arrive at this data is derived from our jail management system, JMS.
No, I mean, how was it established that 420 was the number for Buncombe County?
For our occupational capacity, it's
Yeah.
80% of our maximum capacity, which is 524.
From ACA standards and
Right.
best practices, that anything over 80%, you start maxing out your classification and you can't move people around where they need to be, keep them safe and all that good stuff.
So have any studies been done relating to how big the jail should be in Buncombe County?
Oh, yes.
There was a pretty comprehensive study done several years back, if I recall correctly. But that's kind of what I want you to keep in mind, your North Star, if you're feeling poetic, as we kind of go through this data. All right. So, yeah. Operational capacity. So why does that matter? As Captain Littrell said, there are constraints on how we can use the jail when we get above that operational capacity. Think it in terms of, one, a safety issue for officers and inmates, but also it limits the flexibility of detention personnel to keep general populations separate from segregated populations and make sure that those things are flowing in a way that's the most in compliance with safety regulations. So operational capacity is very important. once it's exceeded, that's when those classification structures that Captain Latrell was mentioning begin to be compromised, and it strains the jail to produce crowding. And like I said, it's usually around 80% of design capacity. If you want to look at it another way, if the jail is overall is at 100% operational capacity, there are still beds available. It's just the structures and processes have begun to kind of deteriorate in terms of their effectiveness. We're going to be going through some of this today, kind of an outline of what we'll be doing. We'll be looking at the jail population numbers, both daily population averages and monthly population averages. We'll be looking and doing a deep dive into some of the drivers, and then talk about the efforts that are currently underway, and then kind of go through some potential efforts that might also further mitigate the population increase. So this is the current daily population trend. This comes directly out of our jail management system, JMS, which is from Central Square. And as you can see, if you look starting, this is through July 21st of this year, by the way. So it's not a complete month for July, but that's going to impact it on the margins. The trend itself speaks for itself. You can see through really February, we're pretty much on par with what our average daily population is the same time last year. But starting in March, we begin to see a bit of a upward trend that really accelerates toward late May and early June, to where we're starting to peak at. We've had at least 2 peaks in the past month at 495, which is again well above 420. So that's our average daily population statistics we wanted to share with you in terms of a trend over time. This is the same statistic, but by month. Now, monthly, when you look at it, you're going to see those numbers are a little bit smaller because you're averaging those days together. You're going to include the highs and the lows, so the overall number is going to be a little bit shorter than that. And again, July is not a complete month, so it would impact this number, but really only marginally because we're talking about roughly another 9 days. But you can see in 2025, the daily population has trended higher than it did in 2024. The reason that we're bringing this to you is that we typically peak, historically we have peaked in September, October timeframe. Now, it may be that we're peaking right now, but that would be a radical departure from historical trends. We typically peak at the end of September or early October. So we anticipate those numbers going even further north, which is why we wanted to address the issue. But as you can see, for July, we're at 478, whereas last year we were at around that 420 mark. So a 13% increase in terms of year-over-year change. So wanted to start going down and do a bit of a deep dive into what makes up this population. And some of this is going to be old hat to a lot of you folks. But these are the populations we're talking about when we say the population of the detention facility. So there's a pretrial population, sentenced, federal, SMCP, which is our statewide misdemeanor confinement program. There's other that don't really fit into a complete bucket. That might be like a fugitive warrant, ICE hold, quick dip for probation, stuff like that. Writs, which are transfers from other counties. Non-support for child support violations, and then probation violations. That's kind of like the big buckets that the populations fit into. And you can very clearly see these percentage changes. I would not necessarily just look at the percentage change, look at the raw numbers as well. For instance, this federal dropped by 14%. Well, that's 2 people, okay? Whereas this is 142%. That's up by what, 34 people? And 6 is 21. Those are much more impactful. And frankly, those are the 2 drivers that we found to be the ones that need to be addressed to kind of get our numbers back under control.
I have a question. So the legislature just overrode Governor Stein's veto about the sheriff having to hold people.
Mhm.
What's our plan? The jail population is going to go up now that the sheriff's required to detain people. So we have, is that?
Yes, that is in fact true. As to whether or not there is a plan for that yet, it happened literally this week. I don't know that there is one yet. I don't know to answer that question, but we can find out and kind of give you that information, get with the sheriff's office on that.
So I can share, we
If anyone else knows.
left a meeting with the sheriff and he's currently sorting through what that means. He's getting advice from his counsel before doing a public presentation on that. But that's a conversation that I think he wanted to have with APD prior to making any public statement, with that being not quite a surprise, but it's unsurprising lines. The sheriff did not have a position ready at this time.
Okay, so to be determined on the plan, but to answer your question around the population, yes, it would increase the population. Any other questions on this slide before we go? We're gonna dive deeper into these two populations. So if there's questions on any of these others, we can address those now. Hearing none. So sentence population. So when we're talking about the sentence population, they fall in two buckets. Those who are sentenced to the Buncombe County Detention Facility, meaning they're serving their sentence in the jail, and those that are sentenced to DAC, which is meaning they're awaiting transport to adult corrections. And so sentenced is up, 142% increase, 34 people more per day on average. And that trend is frankly fairly volatile. It does go up and down. Whereas the DAC has a more consistent upward trend, in fact, doubled from January. There are efforts to reduce time and to collaborate with DAC to get those transfers out. You'll see on a future slide that time right now is sitting at around 27 days. And the sheriff's office is making efforts to expedite that, but they're limited on their end by what the state can do on its end. So there's a bit of a bottleneck there. But as you can see, the trend is well above last year. And again, this is all through July 21st. This is the pretrial population. So this had that 6% increase, roughly 20 more people per day on average. And since March, this has had a steady upward trend that's starting to take shape. And we're now hitting highs above 400. You see those peaks right there. These are the monthly averages, but these are the actual daily averages here. So definitely trending starting in March above historical norms. So why are we seeing higher numbers? Well, let's talk about entries into the facility. So entries in this facility are up 4.1% over the year. Now, we also have releases that are up. They're up by 3.8%. Right here, this little point. But as you can see, 4.1 is outpacing 3.8. So that's leading to this rise. So bookings with the top charge of a felony are up nearly 12%, and percent increases for Class E, B1, B2 charges. Those are the ones we're talking about there. Now, Class I has the greatest number of increase, around 38%. And those are your lower level drug charges, forgery, fraud, et cetera. 17% of the people, just for some secondary demographics, are homeless. Additionally, there are about, we don't have good statistics on our specific jail population, but SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, reports that 44% of those in jail have a mental illness and estimates that about 63% of people in jail have a substance use disorder. So that is broadly painting detention facilities in the course of their study and not specific to Buncombe County, but it's a relevant statistic. So this is where we're seeing an absolute spike in growth. We're seeing it in other places as well, but this is the larger point I want you to take away from here is that entries are exceeding releases. So entries with magistrate orders. So entry with a magistrate order, law enforcement's out making an arrest in the community. There may not be a warrant involved. That's a magistrate order. Now, it may be after the fact. Turns out they have a warrant and there's some other things out there too. So, but we want to talk about entries with magistrate orders because they are up. They account for 45% of all entries into the detention facility. And they're up 5%. Sorry, that should say year over year. It's just year over year. Apologies. Now, 56% of those belong to, of that 45%, 56% are attributable to actual PD and 23% to the sheriff's office And then the rest, the balance is attributable to other agencies. Now, I'm not judging merit on whether or not those arrests are valid or not. That's just where the kind of how it falls out. And when we're talking about these magistrate warrant orders, some of these would potentially be divertible instances, which is why this is an important point to note. So I'm calling this a day in the pretrial population. So I mentioned that the average days of awaiting transport to DAC is 27. We have 462 people in custody. This is July 24th. 462 people in custody for pretrial. That are the pretrial population. 462 people in custody. 376 were identified as pretrial with an average length of stay of 158. This population right here, 72% had a misdemeanor as the top charge in their booking, and they would have to pay just at 900 or lower to bond out. 50 were in custody due to a failure to appear, and 14 of those 50 were failed to appear on a misdemeanor. And then 52 were identified as sentenced, 22 are serving their sentence in the jail, and that 30 still awaiting transport to DAC with that average of 27 days. So that's what the jail, the detention facility, looked like on the 24th of July. These are the items that we potentially want to address. So let's talk about what things are happening right now, that just to kind of keep you up to date on that. So efforts that are currently underway are these. The Sheriff's Office is actively working with the Department of Adult Correction to transfer individuals faster. Again, that is a limitation on the state side that we don't control. And also BCSO has reduced its federal population numbers and is also no longer accepting SMCP individuals, but that's a minority of the jail population, but it is something within our scope of control. So BCSO is taking initiative on that to kind of pull a release valve. But there are potential opportunities for impact elsewhere, and they're these: reducing the population in custody due to a FTA, failure to appear. Offer some other instances. You can offer on-demand transportation. That says Uber, Lyft. Probably should say rideshare. We do not endorse Uber or Lyft. All right, that's my quick compliance note. Formalize and expand options for remote or virtual participation. Expand the use of appearance waivers. Set benchmarks. Reducing dispositions, times, and continuances, and reduce unnecessary orders for arrest through a non-appearance bench card. Now, a lot of these were not suggestions to us, but were suggestions made by the School of Government broadly. And AOC, Administrative Office of the Courts, has since put out a report that backs a great deal of them. So there's two authorities now that are kind of in alignment on these initiatives. We could also do alternative court dates and times. There are alternatives to arrest, such as the law enforcement assisted diversion program, citation programs. And then additionally, we would probably want to discuss, and this is going to be, I would leave this to the actual experts, but this is more on the recidivism prevention side of things. Behavioral health services for a pretrial population that would, prevent reentry potentially, or and then review the Familiar Faces program to see who our frequent flyers are. And then community violence prevention programming, and probably half a dozen other things that we haven't thought of. So, in summary, the jail's experiencing numbers beyond its operational capacity. Essentially, we need to figure out a way to, on average, free up 70 beds. The highest population peaks are coming. They're about 2 months away, if history passes prologue. And there has been a significant increase in the sentence population in the jail. Pretrial population is also up slightly and is driven by an increase of entries and a lag in releases. And then to return to those more manageable levels, we need to attack this from multiple different angles, because there's a couple of big bullets, there's no silver bullet here. So that is a presentation I'm giving for Lee. So any questions that you have that I might be able to answer? If I can't answer them, I'm happily will get back to you with an answer.
This may be better for Latrell, but What used to be the average wait time for DAC? Like 27 days feels like a long time, but I don't know what it historically was.
Sometimes, I mean, it goes between 10 and 15, used to, but since they've closed prisons and since the hurricane, yeah, it's up to 30.
Almost double.
Okay, yeah. I was just curious about that.
Okay.
This is separate from the juvenile report for juvenile detention, right?
Yes. All right, well, if you do think of one, email us, let us know.
I wanted to, actually, before you finish, Matt, I wanted to see from the group, are there other opportunities for impact that you all can think of or even wanting to discuss with this group, because this is the opportunity to do that.
So, and Cap, you probably can best answer this as well. When we're talking about that waiting period for DLC, is that waiting for them to come and claim the inmate, or is that us getting the directive from them to transport them to whatever the nearest facility that they're gonna intake?
That's for us to get approval to take them to them. So
It's
they have to
open up
accept,
spot.
so they have to accept them and then we transport them to them. Now, they have since opened up one bus that I don't nobody say anything, but they'll take it away. But they've opened up one bus to come this way just for us, but that's,
And the bus
nobody
can't,
say nothing
the
about that.
bus can't cover sentences in excess of a certain amount, right? You have to have,
Yes.
right, what is that, Mark?
Usually your high end charges.
Yeah,
like,
so you
you know.
yeah.
Yeah. But for example, like, Mr. Edgerton, you know, just got life, he's usually gone that day to DAC. He's still in our custody and won't leave until Monday. So that shows you how much of a backlog they have and how much of a liability that places on us to house folks.
To be clear, the capacity is not a Buncombe County original problem. There's capacity issues in other places, and that creates capacity issues for us as well.
So I have a question. I'm wondering why working with the DA's office is not listed in this 1 through 7, because essentially they're the
That's the
folks
other.
that have all the power and control to control this population. Except for federal inmates and except for, I guess if you have anyone out of county being housed for some exceptional reason, they're all Buncombe County inmates. So that's not listed. Not sure why.
So get a little more specific, exactly, you say working with the DA, but
Well,
you have,
they have all the power and control
right,
to prosecute cases in a timely fashion. So I'm not sure why they would not be enumerated in 1 through 7. Because that.
Well, they are the
others,
7.
that's the others.
That's the-
Yeah,
that's
that's
the-
what we're having this
others.
discussion for.
But they're perhaps the most important element in the 1 through 7. That's what I'm pointing out. Like, and I will say this, just because I play inside baseball. Meredith Presley is now a judge. Meredith Presley, and you two especially know this, you probably do too, was the hardest working person in that DA's office. She kept that office afloat. And I've just seen the numbers from January onward. I wonder if that has any effect, because Meredith would move cases, Meredith would size up cases. She was, I know, see you're shaking your head. She was always in dialogue with the jail, with extradition folks that maybe the state didn't want. She would make, she was a mover and shaker. And I wonder, just, we do miss her, but I'm very happy that she's a judge.
She's an excellent.
She's an excellent judge. But Meredith was such a hard worker, I do wonder, she held that office on her shoulders. And I don't know who else is taking on her role. Y'all know that too.
Well, along those lines, you said class I felonies are some of the or like the biggest percentage growth
It is.
year over year or since last year. I mean, those are things that the DA's office could coordinate handling on our district court felony plea days. Prioritizing the H&I felonies who are in custody. I know no one from the DA's office here, so like, I guess whatever.
I think it's, we're gonna have a more full day next week. But in the past dates, we've had 2 or 3 pleas on those allotted dates, the bonus days that we've been given, extra judges. So that affects all of this.
I think that's a fair point. So as we're brainstorming that, typically we have a representative from the DA's office, so now that we have that flag, I think that's valid. We should raise that, and then by next meeting, let's come with some specific recommendation as of what we want to see from them and what timeline. I think this will be helpful.
And so just to clarify, because I don't want to mistake what you were saying, you're wanting to see some collaboration with the DA's office specifically around class size?
I'm just
I know
saying,
broadly, but
I think they're the number one
We're
up
making
there
separate points.
versus an Uber or Lyft transportation services. They should be number one.
oh, those are
Figuring out
not
what's
listed
going on.
in order of
It's
priority.
not priority.
Oh, no,
It's
priority.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
most of these
just-
are-
Uber and Lyft can only solve so much. These cases
No,
are
no, no.
waiting to be prosecuted.
Those were listed as potential options.
Yes.
For us to discuss and see how we would want to proceed, just as you're mentioning that would be one of the options.
And I greatly appreciate that too
Yeah.
for folks that don't have transportation, but I'm just saying it's the biggest one.
Yeah, that's a small one, that's really not a big lift, but these are all suggestions to help us move those numbers down. It's like I said, it's no one option, it's a number of options we can do. And I agree with you in terms of us being able to work with the DA to move some of those cases and divert them, especially those lower levels that we're seeing. How do we move those along? We need to have a process to be able to get that done.
Yeah, eyes are gonna be, there's a lot of growth in eyes, and those are gonna be the ones that are more vertical than the further up you go.
Yeah, and I brought up the H&Is because they can be processed in district court without having to do.
The
It's a
district court
transfer.
judges in Buncombe County stand ready to do as many
Right.
felony pleas as can be done efficiently and timely.
We're gonna be working with the district court to make that happen.
And that is consistent with the policy of the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court.
And we've been given those opportunities. We're only, as the public defender, I'm only on one side. I can't put my own case, I mean, I have to have, it takes two to tango is my point.
Mm-hmm.
And
Matthew, do you know if there's been any thought for, because of course we know that a good group of those based on the $9,000 bond, people are having an issue with bonding out. Has there ever been any thought to maybe a bi-monthly review of folks that were placed in jail because they couldn't make bond to review?
We have that.
It was weekly.
You could
No,
do
we
it
need to
we can do it once a week.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So to answer your question, yeah.
If
That's happening.
defense counsel wants a motion for modification of bond, they can notice it in, it'll be done weekly. At some point in time, there's law of diminishing returns, you can't keep seeing the same thing over and over and over again. But at any point in time, if the defense counsel desires to address the bond, that can happen weekly.
But just to clarify, the jail review team still meets weekly? They do. Okay.
And the revisions we've made to pretrial services also provides an option for those lower level offenders to be able to be placed on pretrial without a bond, and they have actual oversight and some level of monitoring happening. Whereas just have them sit in jail and not get any linkages to services, that's the whole point of it, so that we can connect them to services, to partners in the community, so that we trying to be able to get to where we can reduce those familiar faces. That's that over and over turnovers.
I know
But as you're saying, we've got to synchronize all of this work so that it flows. Right now, it's compartmentalized and it's fragmented, and we're seeing the benefits of that.
So I'm hearing one, which is work with the DA's office for them to apply discretion where they have it to kind of help get these numbers down. Are there any other things that need to be on the table that currently are not on the table?
I know Judge Keppel mentioned a mental health court, and you're talking about, there's a lot, so I sit in 3B, I'm there all the time, that's where they're doing all the first appearances. They are the same folks that come through constantly. There's one lady, and I can't remember her name, but she runs back to the Ingalls as soon as she gets out. And they call, probably Asheville Police Department, you go pick her back up, she comes back. Don't know why she's gravitating to the Ingalls, but they don't want her there, right? So she would be a perfect person to try to get and keep out of the jail. So she's not staying long stints, but it literally, as soon as she's getting out, she's right back
But
that day.
But
So
that health court.
That might be the review of the familiar faces program, correct me if I'm wrong, Regina, because that's five arrests in 6 months.
Well, we need to look at that.
Eh,
So
okay.
let's discuss it. I will say some of that talk has come up in our Behavioral Health Justice Collaborative, which is a subcommittee for this one, so can happily share an update about where they stand on that. I know the DA's office did put a lot of groundwork into that one, and Vi has been at the table for that conversation. So that should be up there, but that's one that I think we're waiting to have the DHJC provide the months of research they were doing on that to try to push toward that. That's a great idea.
I'll just say, I mean, we got 24/7, 365 behavioral urgent care in the county. Utilization for law enforcement drop-off is nowhere near where it should be for a county of this size, and so there's capacity there. We have capacity on that unit. We have capacity to disposition people from that unit to other facilities we have in Haywood County, Wilkes County, Caldwell County. And on any given days, we have empty beds in those facilities. So it's not like those facilities are all running at 100% capacity and we can't disposition people. And when you look at the number of drop-offs that are coming from the county, specifically from the city, very tiny number of people, and you're never gonna have a better diversion rate than right on the line. If you're actually taking them into booking, you're mucking things up. There's a ton of opportunity in pre-booking diversion.
Would it have to be a commitment status, like a danger to self or others, or they would just?
You're just picking somebody up and they have a mental health or substance abuse clinic. All they gotta do is take them down there. And now the individual, if they wanna walk right back out the door, they can. And that's where you would need the IVC, if you want to keep them there. But if they're voluntary, at least we can get them in there and try to wrap them, provide the service, get them to wherever they need to be. Those numbers are accurate. In your jail, there's programs in place. We've been working with the county for a long time at creating intercept points to pull those people out. Utilization of them is not where it needs to be. And I think we need to go back to the drawing board and say, we've developed these programs, why aren't they working? Why aren't people utilizing these options that are available to them? And then if there's a reason, let's fix them, get them functioning right. Because you mentioned LEAD up there as well. It's another diversion program. It's on the front end of the system. You can create a LEAD program, but if officers don't actually engage those LEAD programs, they're not gonna divert anybody.
It's a good point.
So I'm hearing two things there, the LEAD program that are engaged there, but then also the issues with getting people out of the system, out of that cycle, mental health.
What I hear you saying, some of that we're gonna have to pivot, and looking at you, Angie, sorry, but understanding what the most recent bill did to a lot of funding for our programs at both the federal and state level, our money is coming in. We're changing what we have capacity for and trying to make sure we're making the best use of the money that we now do have. It's insufficient as best I can tell. I won't put you on the spot and ask you to cite numbers, but I gathered from our last talk that you were concerned about that.
Well, sure, and again, to echo what Donald's saying, you know, the behavioral health urgent care, I mean, we have got to start, you know, utilizing that more. That comes up constantly, but on the other end too, and Donald, this is what he lives every day, with our single stream funding that comes from the state, and you know, of course, we know that's gonna be cut to our managed care organizations, the four of us, and that's the state funding that's approved by the General Assembly that is cut back each year in the House and Senate, basically saying that's gonna happen. So we're just really waiting, right, for that to happen. That's money that goes towards individuals who don't qualify for Medicaid, because even though we have Medicaid expansion, which is fantastic, not everyone qualifies for Medicaid. And so that money is utilized especially for adults and services and programs like we're talking about that cannot build Medicaid, and that's gonna be cut as well.
Yeah, I'll just say to that, from Via's perspective, our crisis continuum is our Alamo. We will not cut any of those services supports in our crisis service continuum unless they cut us back so far. What we will lose in that is sort of the front end preventative stuff, you know, in those cuts, you know, the stuff that may prevent someone from going into crisis, which you can have. But our crisis services system will be the last thing. We're projecting anywhere from a $15 to $40 million cut statewide in those funding. Via's portion will be about $5 million across our region. We're projecting. We don't think that will impact any of our crisis services at this point. So just so.
I did not have a reference to the Alamo on my bingo card today, but all right, thank you. Anything else though?
Thank you very much.
Well, no, just to summarize, what I'm hearing from you all is DA case processing needs to be added to this list. Class H and I felony processing added to this list. And then some sort of update or discussion from the behavioral justice committee around why our VHUP number is so low.
And greater engagement in the LEAD program from officers was another one that came up.
And what was?
Greater engagement with the LEAD
Greater
program.
engagement, okay.
That's second down.
Yeah, that's kind of under that. Okay, so I'm hearing those three kind of new ones. And so one of the, I've been reviewing the bylaws for JREC, and one of the things that we can do is create work groups. So I am wondering if there is any consensus from this group to kind of prioritize items on this list and the new ones we've just added that we'd like to create work groups around. So is there interest in picking a top 2 or 3 items and then asking that we create a work group to delve into those items more deeply?
Can I add one more? And that's just focus on some of that prevention funding that he was talking about because of the cuts to Medicaid. I think that's actually a pretty big piece, like when you think about the how that's gonna affect the housing work that we do to keep people housed and all of that. It spans so many different organizations and so many prevention programs, and so I think that's another kind of thing to be keeping an eye on.
So I will say this is a non-jail statistic, non-detention facility statistic, but you are going to see an increase in economic privation and homelessness due to cuts in funding for food, medicine, things of that nature. So that is a thing that's going to potentially, probably impact the detention facility population.
I'd also think there's AFD rest and co-responders.
Okay.
They some of this.
Especially related to pretty much one of their primary responsibilities. What they've described is what that is.
You're talking about the mental health, VHUG. Okay, so that's part of that. That's part of that.
You're talking about the AFD
Yeah,
rest
we're
room.
talking about that fire department.
Fire department.
Is, I don't know what their level of engagement is.
With the VHUG.
Yeah, almost 0.
Well, that's probably a big piece of this.
Yeah, we'd love to bring some data in here, really to show what that.
A lot of times the problem, like, at least from our law enforcement perspective, is, you know, based on what I'm hearing, is that would be essentially a voluntary referral. And oftentimes, by the point we're dealing with them, it's not necessarily a voluntary.
Right. There's a lot of people working in the field out there that don't know what tools need to be in their toolbox.
But unless they're a danger to themselves or others,
That-
then they can, so if you can assess that,
That's usually the ADA.
you can't commit over there?
Yes, they,
Yeah.
yeah, they're an involuntary commitment certified facility.
So I think it's synchronizing, coordinating all of this because, you know, if it goes this one unit, then you got officers on the street who are arresting when there may be other options. That's what we want to be able to ensure that coordination is happening.
And it would be nice to see drop-offs by officer.
Right.
Because I've been talking about that for years, is you may have one officer that's CIT trained and he's got it, right? He's dropping off. You may have other officers, it's just easier for them to take them to the jail and drop them off and get back out in the field. And I think it's a training issue across our system.
It's not quite that simple. It's
Well-
Our patrol division, actually our sworn staff, it's upwards of 95% trained in CIT.
Yeah, well.
So the great part of
they
both
may
of you
not
coming to
have
this meeting
utilization.
is that each one of you are gonna be invited to the next CIT steering committee. So congratulations, you signed yourselves up for another committee, but we are having talks about those numbers. We have a lot of that, and I think it's gonna intersect very well if we just house the data and then bring that back to the full board, because there's clearly a lot of interest in making sure we're coming up with a list of recommendations from that, and it seems like the DA might be a good person to bring into that group as well. Any other recommendations that we have not thought of? Sheriff's Office, I don't want to leave y'all out, you're the ones who are dealing with it front and center, but if this sounds like a good place to start,
Might be a perfect place to start.
So you good?
Yeah, I mean, is there, I wanna hear from this group if there's interest in taking on a work group for any of these items to dig in to these. Because that is a big piece of what JREC is supposed to do, is to prioritize policies and then create work groups to work on them. So, and if we're not ready to answer at this meeting, that's fine, I mean, maybe we need time to think about it. But
Time is of the
I
essence
was
in
just,
this
yes,
instance.
exactly, we are not, we don't have the luxury of
It
time.
would be ideal
So-
if some of this could be decided right now.
Right.
Yeah, and we don't need a lot of folks. I think a few people who've just already spoken around here. And it really for us, we've got programs. The issue we have, it appears to me, is the system and the coordination to ensure that everything's properly connected. And it seems a little fragmented, just from what I'm hearing. It's not that we're not doing some of the work, it's just it's not aligned. How do we work together? Your office, sheriff's office, PD, and DA's, and probably mine, to see how do we, where's those drops, where's those gaps?
I think Sybil's gonna mention this later in the thing, but the county's gonna have a sequential intercept mapping
Yes.
coming up. That's where really we would bring all our players back together and start talking about, look at all these resources, why aren't they working together? How do we get it to working better? I think that's our first step, to get back together, try to get that functional, because counties had one. Sometimes when you create a piece of paper and you don't take it out and look at it frequently, you're gonna get astray, and I think getting back and getting that map where it needs to be is first step.
Can we just segue into that since he's already said it?
Well, but what you're talking about is gonna be focused on behavioral health
That's what
piece
that-
of the puzzle.
That's
true,
what that
that's true.
does.
Yes. But that's a big, I'm just assuming that's a big part of the numbers that you're talking about there, behavioral health.
Definitely in there, that's for sure.
So let's do this, rather than debate over whether or not we're gonna agree on something, we just say yes to a work group, we'll figure out what that looks like, make a proposal about who should be on that, and let's modify as we go. But it sounds like there's an appetite for it, it's just a matter of figuring out the logistics of what that looks like. And
Who makes the work group, the JRAC or a subcommittee?
the JRAC will do it,
JRAC.
we'll put this forth and it'll be on our next agenda, so we can vote on the ultimate configuration, but we're gonna come up with some proposals to have something concrete to vote on.
So I'm an interloper here, but if I may, we have, by the time you meet next, it'll be October 3rd, and we'll be well ahead our peak, if not past it. So you might wanna have a special meeting at some point if necessary, or have the work groups group at a different cadence than the actual JRAC.
Or another option, we can ask staff, so the Regina's folks to work on that work group, creating that structure and reach out to the appropriate people to start some of those.
Totally, yeah.
Interest? Good.
So I've identified the agency, so look for me to call you.
We need RHA, make sure that's a big, and we can give you contacts.
But recall, we do already have a behavioral health work
That's
group.
what I was wondering, is there
Yeah, so we're
certain
not
apps we
necessarily
need to
creating
put
a
in?
new one. Yeah, we would use the existing one, but to look into the specific
And
items.
see who's there and who's not there.
Okay, well, I'm gonna step away. Thank you for your attention to this. I'm just gonna let that slide hang there till the next thing gets up.
Did a
And-
great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Lee the clone.
Alright, next up for old business, we have a pretrial services update.
Just not a whole lot. As you know, we spoke about it, I think, at our last meeting, some of the things we're proposing and which was put in place. We have made some deviations in our pretrial services program, which we're focusing on nonviolent offenders. Those who are your low level, which you saw on that slide, a lot of the misdemeanors, low level, low grade felony individuals, H&I, nonviolence. We're putting parameters in which we'll serve them up to a year. The goal is to try and get people, we work with the PD and the DA to get these folks in and out and get them into services. The goal is for us to link them to services, link them to substance use, behavioral health, housing, whatever the needs are, identify what those are and do linkages to services. So hopefully we can minimize folks coming back through the system. Again, it's also trying to work with those individuals who are your indigent, your poor folks, and hopefully we'll be able to get buy-in where we're not putting people, allowing people to remain in jail because they can't make bond when we know they have other underlying issues. So that's hopefully a lot of this we'll be able to talk about. So those are primarily the updates that we have for pretrial. The next thing that we're talking about, I wanna add this too. One of the challenges that we are working through is our communications with, ran into a challenge of how do we report and communicate with the judiciary and our partners, courtroom partners. So we're working with that. Our legal team is working with us, help us with that. So just so you'll know, that's something we're trying to address. But our cases are growing in that number because we used to take everybody. So we cut that down so that we can actually manage and help connect folks to community-based services.
Any questions about the general tenor of that? Thank you, Regina. Sybil, you want to give us a Just Home update?
Yeah, sure. So I spoke about this at our last meeting, but for folks who weren't there, we have received a grant from to help with housing and the justice involved population. Regina and I are working on revamping it because it was supposed to kick off right before Halloween happened. So we've had to readjust, and we're trying to put the final touches on what that's going to look like for us. But I did want to make you all aware that the VIA folks are hosting a SIM, which is a data collection process, and I'll let them explain a little bit more about that, August 28th and 29th. And I believe some of you received an invite from Vanessa, but we want to get as many people to the table to talk about housing and our behavioral health population. And so that's one thing to note. And then the other thing is, I do want to make sure that JRAC is involved in Just Home. And so as we're working through the timeline with the grantor, we're making sure that there's opportunities for JRAC to be updated. And of course, this group will get the final presentation from the data that's collected. So that's the update. Don, do you want to talk about the SIM?
Yeah, just a little clarification. The SIM being done in Buncombe County is being done through the school government, and we're collaborating with them, of course. We also have the ability to do our own, but this one, the county actually received it in a grant. So I just want to give you credit for that, that's for sure.
Well, let's clarify that. We didn't. We're actually, I learned about it through oh gosh, Victoria.
It was a
and
grant with UNC.
UNC, right, it's the
And then
state.
they
And so
contacted the county.
some
Want
kind
to
of
do
way.
women's only and then converted it.
Well,
Yeah.
Virginia, they caught it with, what's her name, Virginia?
Victoria, right, yeah.
Victoria. And so Victoria, told me about it, and then I said, great, that actually works with our timeline here for Just Homes and allow us to do a lot of what Just Home is all about, dealing with justice involved individuals, and plugging in a lot of those gaps. And so my pitch to many of you in here is to have you all participate in that, because that's gonna be key to moving a lot of information, creating a lot of these things that we're talking about. Not just housing is one option, but there are other livability issues that individuals need to address. That SIM helps us in identifying those from intercept zero, from pre-arrest all the way through to re-entry. And it's dealing with those who have all these livability issues, and how do we, where are we, and what can we do to address it? So Just Home is a part of that, and we're making that our launching pad to getting engaged in the community, getting those voices from those who are justice involved, and hearing from them to see what their needs are as it relates to housing options.
And for us, just so you know how we use this all across our counties, is get in the room and you talk about all those points of intercept, and you talk about what all resources that already exist and whether what's working or not working in that. Because you don't want to come in and reinvent the wheel. If you already have something, you just optimize it to work better. When we get out of that, there's going to be two things. One, what do we have? How do we make it work better? And then there's going to be two, oh, we don't have anything here. How do we do that? That then drives funding for us to say, okay, let's figure out how we fill this gap in Buncombe County with funding and not duplicate it. So it's a really important exercise that people come to the table, and they're not only around what the county's doing, but also what the nonprofits in the county are doing, you know, whether it's a food shelter or domestic violence work or whatever. All of those we want on the list, because they end up becoming resources as part of those points of intercept. And if we don't know, like, what legal aid is available to people, to help them, then that becomes a gap, or it becomes something we need to optimize and make it work better. And so we need people from all across the system, from the very beginning, law enforcement, all the way, like you said, through reentry, to make sure we get a really detailed map of what we have and what we need.
And it's important to have decision makers there because we need buy-in. You can create these plans, which was done in 2018, and it sits on a shelf. There's no need to bring all of these opportunities and resources, and we don't have people who are gonna buy into it and help us move the needle on these things. So we really need to have that buy-in and commitment to moving forward on this work, because it's amazing work.
Really
So,
good.
and-
I was just gonna say the timing couldn't be better, given like how much the hurricane affected resources and then how much these funding cuts are gonna affect resources. So it's a good time to check in with everybody about what they actually can do and think that they're gonna be able to do in terms of providing services.
Right. And I'll say 35 is the optimal number for SIM attendees, and there are over 40 RSVPs. I know they would like to see someone, Judge Scott. They'd like to see a judge maybe. It's a day and a half commitment, so. But there is really some good representation.
H&I felonies.
It's not a Tuesday, he could get there. That's just Tuesdays.
But I think that's one of the big, they definitely will open up space for folks from that.
Victoria did mention that Thursday afternoon would be the most impactful time to be doing that work.
Let's see.
Thursday.
It works, see, Judge?
In
Thursday.
the interest of not putting Judge Scott on the.
I assure you, I know how to say no. I assure you, I'm not gonna have any subcommittee whatsoever. Thank
No,
you.
it's not a subcommittee, it's not, it's just an engagement, it's really.
I assure you, I'll not be involved in any engagement. Now, analyzing everything about it and then telling you whether I do it or not.
I would ask Judge Keppel if Judge Scott doesn't want it,
She did
because
it
she
last
has an interest in it. She did it last time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay,
that's
I'll have
fine.
Victoria reach out to Judge.
So I want to back up just a little bit because there was mention made of mental health court, and I think it bears repeating because Judge Keppel created Aspire Court from nearly nothing, right? And she now has a nationally recognized treatment court that is a teaching treatment court. And she's been all over this country teaching people how to start up treatment courts. And if you wanted to pick someone to start from scratch, some type of treatment court, you could not choose a better individual. This type of treatment court also is something that the Chief Justice has some interest in. And they recently had meetings for different treatment courts, but they wanted to specialize or drill down on this particular need. And Judge Keppel is very keen to do it in the not too distant future. I can't commit her to it because she would have to commit to it, but I could not think of a better individual than someone with that history. She's fought the funding wars. She's had to talk to everyone in the community from all kinds of different avenues and aspects, has good connections. So if you're trying to target a population that has some challenges with mental health issues, you probably could not get someone, in my humble opinion, better in the state than her to do that. So I just want to pitch that to y'all because it may very well be coming.
I will preview for you that Judge Keppel was our first choice for BHJC prior to you becoming chief. I apologize. And she is very excited to talk about that. We're really in the process of funding Stream to see how we can make that happen, but she has been invaluable as just kind of an architect on that one. Truly fantastic.
Well, I was hoping she was going to be here, but she actually has the afternoon off to be with her child who's getting ready to go back to college. So you'll have her. I'm just pinch hitting, trying to behave.
You mean she's taking care of her like mental health needs?
She's being the wonderful human being that she is,
Model.
spending some time with her child before her child goes to college.
Fair enough. Well, thank you all for contributing on that one. Let's move next to the continuum of care request letter.
Yep.
Putting you back on the spot.
Yep, so at our last meeting, Lacey presented the point in time count. Lacey is on the COC, correct? Yes. And so after that meeting, we were discussing the opportunity for the JRAC to send a letter to the continuum of care to asked very nicely if they would be willing to collect additional data on justice involved individuals. This wouldn't necessarily be just through the point in time count. They have some other subgroups and subcommittees going that could help collect data. So I wanted to put that out there for discussion and see if there's interest from this group in doing that. Lacey could draft something that would then go to the COC.
You want to provide any additional context, Lacey, or?
No, not really, but
Fair enough.
I'll just say that, you know, I think if we're going to add a question to the point in time count, we're gonna need to be very thoughtful about how it's worded, because any responses to that survey are voluntary anyway, and I don't want folks who are experiencing homelessness and filling it out to feel like worried that there's some kind of trap for them in a question like that. But also, you know, there is a work group working on emergency shelter right now. They're collecting a lot of data to try to determine capacity needs for shelter. And there's been a lot of engagement already with law enforcement. And there will be upcoming engagement with the sheriff's office and the jail, like literally next week, to talk about some of the data that's being collected and how we can utilize that. So I think that asking the COC to ensure that there is some focus on collecting data around justice involved folks who are experiencing homelessness, kind of as we're looking at our data collection in general, I think that's something they'd be very open to.
I actually happen to be on the subcommittee. She's absolutely right. That would be nothing for us to ask.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But yeah, if you could just kind of formalize it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
Jeff Brown
happy
is
to.
actually on the COC board.
Okay, great.
I'd be happy to draft it. What should process be once I have a draft? Do I need to send it just to you and Regina, or to?
Share
how
it
should
with
that-
Regina and then she can share it out with the group.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
And then if anything comes up, folks, just send your feedback to Regina or any questions you might have for insight into what should be in the letter, but we'll look forward to that. You've been doing great work there.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
All right. And I don't know why this has my name on it, because I do not want to present this part, but it is the JRAC bylaw amendment. Just kind of give us a quick segue into that. We've had and been operating from some older bylaws. There are a few tweaks we need to make changes on about membership, folks who are engaged, making sure that people are coming to our meetings. For those who've been on for the past year, you've seen a lot of effort to try to re-engage folks who have kind of ebbed and flowed. The good and bad thing about our community is that people get promoted very quickly. So we have a lot of new faces around the table, but I think we have a solid group of long-term representatives and people who are probably not going to retire, I hope, no pressure, who are willing to engage. So I just want to formalize that and make sure we're solidifying everyone's position, that we keep these folks at the table so we have decision makers and people who are engaged in the work, people who are committed to this long-term as opposed to what we've had in the past of varied levels of engagement. And we're very thankful that we have our bench and law enforcement partners permanently at the table with us. So to that end, Sybil, you want to present the specifics, and we have a
Yep.
series of recommendations, all optional.
Yeah, all optional, but can you go back, because before we jump into that, I wanted to share a little bit more around what Commissioner Moore mentioned. So when Regina first started, I asked her if there are any changes that she felt would be helpful for JRAC, because one of the things that that I've heard as I started in this role was a need to have more engagement with JRAC and create more value to these meetings. And so in that regard, I asked Regina to come up with some recommendations. And so the main recommendation that she's looking at is also, as Commissioner Moore mentioned, is around membership. And the big question is, and we don't have to answer it today, but is there an interest in expanding the membership to include more community organizations, more community input? And I understand from DK, who's my predecessor, that there's been a discussion around this in the past, and the idea was really that JRAC was a new board for Buncombe County, and so we wanted to get kind of our feet on the ground and get things going before we got bigger. And so that may still be the case where we're still, trying to get everything settled before we expand. In which case we leave membership as it is. But I just wanted to share this and have a discussion about pros and cons and get your feedback. But again, no vote necessary today. So we can go on to the next slide. So first and foremost, also as Commissioner Moore mentioned, just some minor potential changes to the bylaws. Amy Broughton is here from our legal department, and she kind of manages our bylaw template, if you will, for our other advisory boards for the county. And so in talking through the bylaws, there are some changes to align better with the county template that we would be looking at. One of those, there's 3 examples up there. Election of vice chair, for example, it's done by secret ballot. That's not something we typically do in our county bylaws. So if there's history behind why that was chosen, please let me know, but it's not something that we normally see. So again, more of a technical correction than anything else. Also proxy limitations, just one, our bylaws allow for proxies. And understand, it's not possible for everyone to come every single time, but the more decision makers we have at this table, the more decisions and progress that we can make. So it's really important that we have the right people in the room. And then also attendance. There's 2 seats that are appointed by the commissioners, the community seats, and we have not had attendance from at least one of those. At all since I've been here. And so that's been an issue. So we want the opportunity to, if people are not attending, then, we should be able to rectify that. And that's not in our bylaws currently. So those are kind of housekeeping pieces. And then again, the next part is really the core of what I want to discuss, and that's around the membership and including more community members. And then the other piece of that is what I'm used to and what our regular bylaws, template bylaws contemplate is that staff really serves as a subject matter expert. So for example, I'm actually on JRAC as a voting member, which feels odd to me. My proposal would be to take staff off and have them be the subject matter experts and have them be the implementation team. Staff doesn't normally set policies. Staff normally, we're the worker bees. We get things done. The group of people who have a dedicated seat on here, the elected officials, and others, you all are here to set policy, and staff is here to carry it out. So that would be another change to consider. So,
can you give an example of the board of commissioner appointed positions?
There's 2 in the current bylaws. There's just 2 community member positions, and those are commissioner appointed.
So when someone
so they-
applies through the county on the website, they go through the process and then we just vote to put them on the committee.
As a specific person, not as a representative of a group or something. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly.
I get it.
Yeah, so again, why would we consider doing this? We've already talked about this, so it's really get more input from the community, potentially increase collaboration, and then again, the change with staff is really around getting, productivity and better outcomes. So, and ultimately adding value to JRAC. We want these meetings to be worthwhile. We want to be able to say, we've done this, this, and this. And next, I think that. So, here's an example. This is just, again, ideas. It's really about adding community members to JRAC. And one of the concerns, I had when I talked about this with Regina was, do we want JRAC to get so big, right? And so, but if we were to remove staff, keeping staff here as subject matter experts, but not as a voting member, and add these, you would end up going from 24 seats to 30. All right, so,
One of the things I would say to that, Sybil, is
yeah.
I don't know about all of those law enforcement organizations up there, but specifically the ones that are involved in the PSIP, maybe we should extend an invitation for them to be at the table.
This would be one representative, like most places would have a chiefs of police association that represents all of the agencies, and that association would have one rep attending to speak on behalf of their group.
They
So
do
it may
have
be the
a-
president or the vice president, however they decide.
They do have a monthly, I shouldn't say monthly, but they do have a regularly scheduled meeting of all the chiefs in the area. At the next meeting, I can ask them if they want to propose for one of those people to be the spokesperson for that group.
Let's wait and see until we actually have this
Yeah,
as part
just
of
an
our.
idea.
Yeah, we're not
This
ready
is just
yet.
an idea.
We're just talking right now.
So
We're
when
just-
you were saying that it wasn't have a representative from each of those, it would just be one representing those smaller jurisdictions.
What does returning citizen mean?
That's
Formerly
someone with
incarcerated.
experience.
Thank you.
Can you define number 9? I'm kind of interested in 9, just, what's the age range here?
Well, that's something we could discuss. I would say anywhere between 18 and 24, young adult.
Okay, 18 to 24.
And the main reason for that, we've had that discussion around JCPC before, but if you're under a certain age, you may not be eligible to vote for this kind of committee, so. Certainly want input from folks who would fall in the juvenile range lawfully.
So there are committees that have bylaws about voting age?
That's what I'm told. I don't know if that's correct, I'm not a civil attorney.
She doesn't think so? No, I mean, we don't enumerate that. I mean, none of the bylaws specifically say you have to be over the 18. I think that's implied, but certainly.
Should talk about it. It's gonna come up in a future JCPC meeting. I'm not on that committee anymore, but that has been an issue in the past.
And remember, this is a recommending body.
No, I was just following up on something Commissioner Moore said, so.
That's
Oh, no. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm just saying whether it's under 18 or old or young person, whatever the age is, we're making recommendations, not actually.
I know, he implied that there were enumerated voting
Oh.
ages in other committees, so I was asking a
No, I get
follow-up
you.
question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem.
I take umbrage with the fact that you're saying that 18 is young. I thought 35 was young.
Oh, yeah, someone just turned
I really
34,
take
35
it
is young. I think it is now that I'm real old.
That's what I'm saying.
Wish I was
I mean, what are you
still
talking
35.
about? Young should be under the age of 35.
Okay.
Let's move along.
So these are just considerations, that is even
Yeah.
until the bylaws change.
So that's the recommendation. That's the age recommendation there. Okay.
Does anybody have any concerns about the categories themselves?
Nope, I like the schools being involved.
In the past, we've had the schools that have been engaged, but we never had a formal spot in the bylaws, so we want to codify that and make sure they stay permanent members, rather than just asking Maggie to come voluntarily in her free time. Great, we can move
Yeah,
forward.
next slide. So yeah, is there interest in that? And also to note that per our bylaws, the steering committee gets to review the bylaws, and I guess they vote, the way I understand it, and then it comes back to JRAC as an announcement. Is that
Yes.
correct? Yes. So it's not something this group would vote on, but I did think it was, opportunity to get some feedback on that. Or if there's
But I will say for us, we have the wonderful opportunity of sitting on committees across 32 counties of North Carolina. And there's a lot of committees. The main thing is you can have as many people as you want. If it's not actionable, there're just lots of committees. And we sit on lots of committees where nothing ever gets done. Nothing ever moves because the people aren't able to make decisions. So you talk about great stuff, but the membership is one thing, making it actionable is the most important thing.
Well, I think this is, Sybil has worked very hard on this and talking about that. We've had probably more meetings than she's ever wanted to have with me. But a big part of that is moving forward, and we can't do that without a full leadership team, including a vice chair. So in the likely event that at some point I miss a meeting someday, it'd be great to have someone who can fill in. Great, well, we'll get to work on that. We'll move into subcommittee reports. We don't technically have any, but some of the groups have started meeting again. And I'm excited to hear a lot, especially from the BHJC. Victoria is not present today, but she has been doing a lot of really important mental health work in our community, and I think has a lot to share with us when she's back. Anyone else part of those work groups that have concerns that you want to raise? If not, we'll save that for the next meeting? All right, announcements, the only one I've got is the should say vice chair, but vice chair nominations are due September 26th. You can email those to me, martin.moore@buncomnc.gov. And I'm happy to put that before. I'm not going to vote on who should be vice chair, but just someone who is present, comes to meeting, and ideal world, contemplate passing the bylaws before we vote on the vice chair, so we can make sure it's an eligible member, because if it ended up being, for example, hypothetically civil, you would not be able to serve as vice chair. So we'll do the bylaws first, and then we'll talk about who the vice chair is. If anyone is interested, wants to put your name out there right now, you can spare me an email.
Exactly. Raise your hand, don't everybody do it at one time.
I actually had a question about, is there a new committee that I didn't know about? The coordinated community response?
That's been a while.
That one's been around. I'm not sure if it was properly structured when we first created it, so I don't know if that falls as a subcommittee to a committee, and I'm just exposing why local government is frustrating.
And
But that they have been doing work for quite some time. Who's the chair of that one?
I was gonna say, it's a community coordinated response around domestic violence and sexual assault. So
Specific to those, but not a general response.
No, this is a very, please.
Well, and I'll just say just a little background, so I've sat here with that hat on and on JRAC, and they just, and the idea was to actually make it a committee because, and like kind of formalize that work, because we sit here in this role, but then adding like some actual weight behind it to like help move things forward and bring a voice to the committee more formally.
In practice, that's functioned kind of like a worker around those issues, but their work has existed long before they became a part of JRAC.
Yes.
Vice Chair. All right, I won't put you all on the spot, but please feel free to send the email. We will happily get you up there and make sure all the names are balloted. It will not be a secret ballot. I don't know why we ever did that, but it's over. Any member comments, anyone would like to say? I'm grateful to have a full table today.
I will say this real quick. For those of you all that have been keeping up with legislative actions, the Freedom to Carry bill is still very relevant. They did not vote on it the last session on the 29th as planned, which it was moved to the 30th. They've moved it now to August 26th. They are very strategic in how they're going about the business, trying to make sure they have the numbers before they vote on it. And so it's been tabled again to the 26th, so we'll see what happens then.
And also for folks who are on the steering committee, if you didn't know, September 5th will be our next meeting. So.
How do we move to change the bylaws so that the clerk is included on the steering committee?
Do that.
It's something that the steering committee would have to vote on.
Cool.
Okay, so let's do this. We will go ahead and formalize our next steering committee meeting.
I've recommended it at multiple meetings.
Let us put on our agenda, I'll say this on the record, to address that issue during our next steering committee, to have the clerk of court become a permanent member of the steering committee.
Would be great. Thank you.
Of course. Any public comment from anyone who's not a part of JRAC who is here? I'm not putting you on the spot, Brent, but you're welcome to.
No, thanks for having me.
All right, yes, you are.
Yeah, I just read the bylaws. I feel as though I've been tricked into this. Keep going.
Yeah, every elected official and the public defender, but not the clerk on the steering committee.
I thought those poor people in it have to meet again, and then it was me.
Well, I will always sign people up for more meetings, and I apologize for whatever oversight led to the clerk not being on there from the beginning. That should have been a thing. All right, well, if there are no public comments, we will go ahead and make a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, if you're opposed, stay here.